Welcome to Enlightenment of Change on webtalkradio.net. Of course, I am your host, Connie Whitman. Thank you for joining us this week. So every week as you tune in, guys, I know that, the whole concept of change, it's hard, right? It takes effort and it's hard. So I really, really hope that my guests and I provide some tips, ideas, strategies that you could implement immediately after listening to the show. For me, the application is where you get the results. So take that idea, take that tip, and run with it and watch the magic that can happen. So, of course, to help you on this journey of change, I have a gift for you. It's a free gift. Go to my website and you're going to click on whitmanassociates.com/ and then you're going to put CSA. I will put this in the show notes as well. I want you to take my free communication style assessment. It gives you a little bit of insight into your natural communication superpowers, and you get a report for that. You also will get a report on your blind spot, and you know how I feel about that. I feel like our blind spots is where we end up shooting ourselves in the foot. So please review those reports. You can email me with any questions, but I do hope that helps you as you navigate change, maybe make it a little bit easier, and that is always my goal with the show. So I want to start with my motivational quote, which is by Arvo Part, and Arvo says, "The human voice is the most perfect instrument of all." So, how many of you dislike hearing your voice on a recording? Do you shudder as you listen, perhaps? And what if you could find the power in your voice to change how you see yourself and maybe how you see the world? I know this topic is beyond cool, and of course my guest today is extremely cool, and we are going to talk about the power of the voice. So my guest today is Marshall Davis Jones, and we are going to discuss the power of your voice. Now, Marshall relied on words alone. And as a performance artist, he thought having the right words was enough. But after exploring movement, practices, and its connection to sound, he discovered you can actually improve your life if you improved your voice. So his company, MindBodySpeak, is his unique approach beyond words to address the power of the voice. His trained voices from law enforcement. He has trained voices from law enforcement to luxury insurance agencies, and he has also spoken on numerous TEDx stages. With MindBodySpeak, he offers his voice to help you find your way back to yours. Now, Marshall believes the voice sends many messages immediately to our listeners and to ourselves, and mastering it is truly the path to self-discovery. So please help me welcome my amazing friend and guest Marshall to the show. So Marshall, thank you for being on.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. I appreciate this. And yeah, I mean, where do we start? Where do we go? I think
my first question, Marshall, is why voice? And your story is really fascinating. So just share with everybody why voice? Why you focused on this?
uh, I had a colleague of mine get on stage about, what was this, April 2010, for the Grand Slam finals. And for anyone who doesn't know about slam poetry in particular, it's like poetry, but like gladiator style. So it's competitive poetry.
Cool.
People are using their words and battling each other. And so really for audience acceptance, right? And so he gets on stage and he has this voice that I know he didn't have 6 months ago. Why does he sound like this? But I also could hear the power in it. I'm like, all right, he's gonna win tonight. Not just because his poetry was beautiful, but the way he was delivering it, it was just like a sixth sense of knowing. So after he won, I said, okay, explain the Shakespeare dying in your mouth thing you got going on. And he says to me, I'm in acting school. Which, when you zoom out and and I rethink it, and I'm like, well, that was painfully obvious that he was in acting school. He had this, but he said the very first thing that they train before they train technique was voice, because the voice is life. And so that idea that the voice is life is a germ that got into my mind, and I needed to resolve it, and here we are.
And here's the thing. When he said that, right? Like Zoom, kind of obvious. But then when you really percolate it and kind of thought about it, the power in the voice. And you know what's really cool, Marshall, is with podcasting, people, are following me on the podcast and they're emailing me, and there's this whole different dimension of engagement than on Facebook or LinkedIn, or, when you're just working regular doing speaking events. And so when I ask, oh, why, why'd you start following me? They go, oh, I listened to your podcast. That, you know what the podcast does, because it's intimate, right? I'm in people's ears. There's such a beautiful, and I don't mean that in a weird way, guys, right? With intimacy, but it's such a beautiful, intimate connection because my voice is in their ear. Your voice is in their ear, right? It's so close to the brain where hopefully we stimulate and inspire them to make, right, the change. That's what the show is about. So it really is such an intimate tool, yet we don't think about that. So I loved when I met you. I was like, whoa, this is like the coolest topic ever, right?
Oh, absolutely. To the podcast thing, like you say, your voice directly into the ear. The stapedius muscle in the ear is the smallest skeletal muscle in the body. And as with skeletal muscles, I'm a nerd out for a moment, but skeletal muscles are muscles that you can somewhat control, right? So you have smooth muscles, and those are muscles that you can't control. They work. The nervous system takes care of that involuntarily. But you have this tiny muscle in the ear that's responsible for transmitting the sounds that come into you. And that small muscle has such a strong effect on the rest of the body. Whenever whenever your eyes move, your ears move, and actually move first. So before you glance over at something, your ears have already gotten to where you intend to look. And so there's such a potency in that part of the body because the body prioritizes its attention. And so when you have someone's ear, they get to know you in a way, they hear you in a way, and so they connect, like you say, versus a LinkedIn or Facebook. Clubhouse is actually an application that has taken this to the upteenth degree. I actually met a friend of mine, Jim, and I met him over
Nice,
Clubhouse.
Andre.
Yeah,
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 my
we
buddy.
were. That's right. We were, and we were in multiple rooms before, like we connected further. But the idea was, you hear someone and you get to know them with the audio, and then you're like, you know what? Let's see where this can go. And so when people hear you on the podcast, of course, they're like, you know what? I feel like I know Connie in a way that I wouldn't know her if I just read a passage that she wrote or maybe saw a caption on her Facebook page. And that's a powerful thing.
And the other thing I hear too, Marshall, which it makes me giggle. I grew up in New Jersey, right? You and I spoke. You're originally from the Brooklyn area, Jersey City, right? You grew up in Jersey City. And I have a Jersey accent. This is born and bred. Of course, I try to minimize it. And when I say that to some people, they go, no, we love your Jersey accent. It's charming. So I giggle and I think, okay, that's good because it's a different sound, perhaps if they're out west or in the Midwest or, the southern part of the United States, right? They have that more of a drawl. It's just fascinating how people respond to your sound and the compliments you get. So I giggle when I hear that. They go, oh yeah, we knew you were from New Jersey. And I just laugh. I go, yes, I'm from New Jersey, So it's cute. But see, what you said is true. It's me. I don't know how to not be me. So I feel they feel that intimacy, authenticity from me, just because this is, how I speak, and all of those things. I have another question. Of all of the things that you've been learning about voice since 2010, when you kind of started doing that deep dive, what's something or multiple things maybe that surprised you the most?
You know, hmm, the so when I began to explore, I thought, okay, the voice box is the thing. You gotta work on the voice box, and that's how you improve everything. So one of the first things that really stood out to me was how communication, particularly speaking, is a full body experience. There's the concept of nonverbal communication is sort of a odd paradox. And this is why, because the word verbal means of verbs. So nonverbal communication kind of cancels itself out because you're looking at body language and the body's movement, or the demonstration, right? When you speak verbally, it's of verbs. The body's action system and speaking system are very, very, very intimately linked, closely linked. We walk our talk. And so the separation of the idea that the voice and the body that speaks or uses the voice were somehow separated, or that the idea that it was just, let me just focus on my vocal cords. It blew me away. The more research, the more in depth, the more it became very clear that this entire instrument is active in ways that uh, we don't really, we wouldn't know to consider, because we're on autopilot,
Yeah.
and getting the control over it. There's a quietude, because another thing that surprised me in the focus was I thought I was training people to speak. That's what I think I'm doing. That's what I thought I was doing. But what I'm actually doing is I'm trying to get people to the fastest way to silence, because that's when strangers interact with each other. They say that conversation is great for strangers to meet each other because it's not just the words that are being exchanged. Now, theoretically, that's how it's positioned. It's like, oh, you're getting to know someone. But the things that are able to be detected in a human voice, it's not just the words and hey, hello, hi, how are you? I'm from here, I'm from there, I'm from there. There's so much information in your voice
Hmm.
that whoosh, immediate, uh, a tenth of a second. That's all you got. Your voice makes an impression on another person in a tenth of a second. There's a very small window of opportunity to position yourself or make an impression. And that small window gives so much information that it blows my mind. Because you think, oh, you hear I got an elevator pitch. I got 60 seconds, 30 seconds, but you don't even get to say your whole name before someone has already made a decision
Yeah.
internally about, I don't know if I'm gonna keep listening, or maybe I will, right? And so these are just these varied things that were like, whoa. I mean, day in and day out, there are these like burst of, whoa, I didn't know this and I didn't know that. And that's the thing that continues to surprise me, is that I continue to be surprised. I continue to be, uh, you know, to see science confirm some things that have been intuitive, where, when I began this work and started studying, you make these decisions and we don't trust ourselves very much, right? We think, I don't know, maybe I don't know. I don't know enough, or I can't confirm this enough, or where's the empirical evidence? When I find little medical journals in the cut that say, "Oh yeah, we discovered this," but it's in the grand scheme of the discovery, it's negligible, right? They're like, "Oh yeah, we figured this out," but it's like new information. But for me, as I'm putting together this body of work, it's like, "Oh, this is the piece of the puzzle that."
Yeah.
So it's the treasure hunting for the evidence. Where when I talk to people about some of the principles and things that I teach, uh, there there was the confidence of testing things out and trialing them, because watching them work is like, oh well, it worked, and then it worked again, and then oh, it worked again. But when I'm like, oh, it works, And here's the article you can read if you'd like to figure out why it works. Uh, and so it's we have way more s- sensory perception,
Yeah.
and that astounds me.
Yeah.
And so, as yeah, as it relates to our voices and the use of them, um, I'll say one more thing. So when you're thinking, the musculature to speak is activated very subtly, but it's active. So when you're having, you're ruminating on stuff, your voice box is activated by that. And so we have to be very mindful of the things that we think, the
Mm,
things that we allow ourselves to think about, because even if you're not saying it out loud, you're still saying it
mm,
very subtly.
mm.
And, so it makes me a guard of my mind. And it inspires me to help others to do the same thing, because there's no benefit in destructive rumination,
Yeah.
and dwelling on, because you're affecting your whole system,
Yeah.
even with your
Absolutely.
thoughts. Yeah, so
Absolutely. Well, they say that if you say a negative word, right, that negative word has its own vibration as well, and that now that vibration is out in the world, in the universe, and it's there forever. So the
yes.
more toxic words, the more toxic behavior, the more toxic tones, screaming at each other, yelling at each other, it's just all negative vibration, and that affects the world around us, right? How we see the world around us. Another thing I wanted to comment on, that it's just, I'm fascinated by this topic, but when I teach sales, right, that's my zone of genius. I always say there's two conversations going on. The one that's live, that you feel that you're participating in, but there's this unconscious conversation going on. And you
Mm-hmm.
have to make sure you're aware of that unconscious conversation. This is what we're talking about today, to a large extent.
Right.
What's that unconscious conversation happening? You have to get in control of that, so that the customer, the client, the prospect, who's ever in front of you, connects with you again on this intimate level. And everybody thinks that word intimate is weird, but if the client can't connect with you with their body, the energy of their body, they're not going to
Right.
want to do business with you, period. So
Exactly.
again, this is what we're talking about, is this unconscious conversation that we have to master. The other question I have for you, and I don't remember who the science is or who came up with it, but they say that 55% of our communication, or a perception of communication, is body language.
Mm-hmm.
38% is the tone of our voice, and really 7% is the words. Where do you land with that? And is there an element of what you teach that you kind of bring that into the mix as well, or totally different plane?
So I take those two, the 55 and the 38, 93, and I call it body tone. So
Love it.
93% mind, body, speak, and then the 7% is the words, right? So then it all comes together, because you're actually gonna say the things you're gonna say,
That's right.
and you can, um, your body language and your tone of voice are not separate. Uh, for example, if I were to slump and right away, my voice changed.
Absolutely.
And, you know, we underestimate there's more than one layer of our physicality. There's an internal, in what I call the intention, of physicality beneath the layer of what you actually see. Now, back to the whole thing about sales. Your client can hear immediately whether or not you believe in the product that you're selling.
That's right.
They know it. They like, and if you don't, you cannot for a moment believe that they're gonna, if you're like, mm, so I have this program where, I train voices, and, I want people to feel more confident. They're gonna go, okay. This person seems like they don't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. Why would I? And so like you're saying, that energy, you don't have that much time. You have a very small window to give people the impression of what it is. You know what? There's a show, it's called My 600-Pound Life. And the doctor says the same thing to every single patient. He says, you're gonna have to lose the weight or you're gonna have to get this surgery. It's the same. His lines are the same. It's almost ad nauseum. It's so boring. He's like, okay, you're gonna have to lose the weight and you're gonna get the surgery. But what fascinated me were the voiceovers of the participants. So you would have voiceover A. Person goes, so the doctor says I need to exercise and lose the weight, and so I'm gonna exercise and lose the weight. Okay. And I want everyone to guess whether or not that person exercised or not, or whether they went under the knife. I think
They
it's pretty,
pretty
right? Go
clear.
ahead.
Yeah, yeah.
Under the knife.
Under the knife.
Other, on the next voiceover, doctor said I need to lose my weight. I gotta exercise. And in the voiceover alone, every time with 100% accuracy, you could tell who was going under the knife in the next 20 minutes and who was actually going to lose the weight in the next 20 minutes.
That's right.
Every time. And and that was the other thing that kind of whenever you watch movies and there's a coach, the coach can be as fired up as they want to be. Coach can give the best speech, but it's what happens when the coach is done, right? It's when the team goes, yeah. It's when they're like, "Ugh," and that the vibration in the team, they're about to go out there and give it their best. And so when it comes to the transfer of energy vibrationally here, again, we talk about this like, woo, it's not. It's simple physics at this point. I have a vibration. I transfer that vibration into your system. Your system either accepts or rejects this vibration. And if it accepts this vibration and is willing to then sympathetically resonate with it, it will return that vibration. And if I can get enough people to do it together, now you have a coliseum of people ready to do whatever it is that they are inspired to do. And that's the power.
It's and it's funny. I had one gentleman, and you just have to laugh at these people. And I try not to judge when they do stupid things, right? So this one young man, he said he has adversarial conversations on the telephone, right? Now for sales, now we have Zoom, but pre-Zoom, a lot of phone, right? A lot of phone contact.
Yeah.
So I said, well, what's your body language? And he poo-pooed, has nothing to do with it. It's the most ridiculous thing I ever. I said, okay, all I'm asking you is I want to see your posture. I want to see your body. I want to see where are you when you're making those phone calls. Marshall, it was hysterical. He slouched, and then he made, for those of you that are on audio and not watching the YouTube, literally like a noose around his neck with the hand pulling up on the noose around the neck. So his body language, the energy he was transmitting to the clients were, you don't matter to me. I don't care. I don't want to be on this phone call. I dislike you. I hate my job. That's what was coming through to me loud and clear through his body language, which translated into the tone of the voice, which translated into the energy the person was feeling, thus creating adversarial conversations. So when and now everybody in the room, there's like 15, 20 people in the room. They're all looking at me like, he's an idiot. Like, he just proved your point. And I giggle. And so I said to him, listen to me. I'm telling you what you just did is you are creating the result that you're telling me you don't want, but you're creating the result because of your behavior. You can listen to me. You could not. You don't affect my life. So I'm teaching you the right thing. You could go and do what you want now. And everybody in the room at the end, they all came up to me. He's an idiot. I said, everybody's on their journey. If he wants to blame the job and he's in deflection mode, that's on him, right? We can bring the horse to water, right, Marshall? We can't
Right.
make you drink the water or drink the Kool-Aid. So it's just fascinating what you just said. Like when you slouched your body, your tone of voice immediately changed. We are vibrational beings, and our voice, the way it vibrates in our voice box, right, is what's being transmitted out into the world, and then perception and all those things, come into play. What are some of the practical tactics that you teach that, maybe everybody listening right now, because I'm all about application, Marshall. I like to help people move the needle. What are some of the practical tactics that they can maybe implement immediately?
So here's one thing, and and this is another thing that, this goes under the, whoa, that's so cool. So the sound affects all of the senses.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say all of them, that includes smell. That blew my mind. Sound affects every single sense. And the other thing that we do that affects all of our senses is eat. So I'm gonna draw a parallel here. The brain has a very interesting cross pollination between the thoughts that we have about parasites
Mm,
and the thoughts that we have about people.
mm,
So our moral judgments, right? When we think about morals, we think about something being pure or impure, right? And to the brain, that means impure means, well, if I eat this, I could die. That's how it thinks, right? So now you have a lot of things like belief systems and stuff like that. That
mm,
why would I defend my beliefs to the death? Well, because believing what you believe, I could die, right? That's to the brain. It's like this is pure, this is impure. Now, how does this relate to food? Well, when we think about food, the body has reactions before we even eat, right? That's like when you're thinking about the smell, you just go into the kitchen, your stomach starts, you're like, oh my goodness, blah, blah, blah. Now, this has a very interesting effect on the quality of the voice. So, Connie, humor me. I want you to think about like something gross. Like you're like, I don't want to eat that. I don't want to touch it. I don't want to smell it. Right? And tell me about a cool experience that you had. But I want you to keep in mind the imagery that I just gave you. That is
okay.
something gross. Go ahead.
All right. So I'm thinking about a tomato. I hate raw tomatoes. So that thought in my head. Let me just get it in my head. Raw tomato. And I have to tell you about a cool experience. Okay. So when I was 16, we went to Florida. My parents had bought a townhouse condo down there. And we were walking on the beach before dinner. And I grew up in Newark, New Jersey, which I shared with you. And there were dolphins. Well, I'm running down the street, running down the beach, screaming, "Get out of the water, there's sharks." And they were dolphins. So there's my kind of cool story.
Okay, copy. Now, how did you feel with holding that imagery in your mind while sharing this story just now?
What was funny? I don't know if this is the right word, so it might be too strong, but I was disgusted as I was thinking that image. I was disgusted in my idiotness that I thought dolphins were sharks, and I'm screaming for people, right, to come out of the water because I thought they were going to die.
Right, right. Of course, understandably so. Now, check this out. We're gonna do this again, but this time, Connie, I want you to think about your favorite meal on earth. Just whenever that comes on your plate, if it's something that you make, something that old memory, something that your mom, your grandma, whoever made it, and you just, man, and I want you to tell us the same story again.
Okay. All right. So, yum, yum, yum. Okay. So, parents rented, bought a townhouse condo, whatever, down in Florida in St. Petersburg. And we were getting ready for dinner. And so my sisters and I were like, oh, let's go to the beach. We'll take a walk on the beach. Well, as we're walking on the beach, I see, dolphins going, through the water, breaking the water. And I'm literally screaming at people running down the beach, "Get out of the water, you're going to die. There's sharks, there's sharks." And finally, older gentleman, grabbed my arm it startled me, and and I looked at him, and he goes, "They're like he taught me they were dolphin, not sharks, and that everyone was safe." And he assured me that it was really okay. And he, immediately, of course, calmed me down because I trusted that he knew what he was talking about. Right? He seemed to be a Floridian.
Okay. Now, Connie, here's the same story twice. Now, tell me what changed this time.
So isn't that funny? The first time I just thought that's not an important detail, or the detail didn't run through my head. But now that was an important detail, right? The gentleman grabbing me because I was afraid for these people, and he immediately calmed me, and I trusted him again because he appeared to be Floridian, but he clearly took an authoritative stance with me that I really believe they were dolphin and not sharks, and I immediately calmed down. I don't think did I mention that in the last one? I don't even remember.
No,
I did not. Isn't that fascinating?
it is.
Fascinating.
So for all of the listeners, right, and I'm sure you can go back and listen to these stories again, which is great that we have this documented. The very first time that the story was shared, right, you were like straight to the point. It was like, all right, went beach, dolphin, sharks. Now, when we think about something that's gross and disgusting, right? Think about how the body responds, your immune system, everything. You don't care about your immune system. If there's something in your body that is wrong, your immune system shoots first and asks questions later, because it's like, we got to get rid of the problem. Like, I don't want to know.
That's right.
I don't want to investigate, right? If you put something in your mouth that's disgusting, do you go, I wonder what it's immediately. I go, get this away from me, right? And then even for yourself, you were like, I was thinking about how stupid I was. But remember the second time when you said it, you totally were like, you talked about how you and your sister were like, oh, let's go on the beach. You started to fill in more of the details, and the image was brighter. And even when you talked about the gentleman talking to you, he said, oh, he taught me that there were dolphins and not sharks. Instead of you thinking, oh, how could I think that they were sharks? You laid out how it was a learning experience, and I wouldn't have thought that you felt the way that you felt about it from the way that you told it the first time.
Okay, now just everybody listening, this is the truth. Marshall and I did not talk about this. He did not ask me to think about it in advance. That was truly on the spot. Now, isn't that funny? The first time I say my sisters and I went on the beach, and I didn't say that part at all either.
You did not say.
No kidding.
No, you were like, yeah, me and my sister, we were down there, like, we're going to the beach. You described like, oh, you were like, yeah, we were like, there was a dialogue. You started to talk about the dialogue more, about what was exchanged word-wise.
Fascinating.
At first, it was just like, yeah, we went down there, thing. I said they were dolphins. They weren't dolphins. They were sharks.
Yeah, I was an idiot.
Right. Like, well, look at me. What's wrong with me? This time you were like, yeah. And then the sun was out. And then we said, hey, the beach. And then the guy grabbed me. And he said, listen, it's okay. They're actually dolphins. And I felt better. But I knew that they were in. Right. So you were able to fill in all of these things.
That's hilarious.
And it's just like when we're eating something that's good. Before we swallow it down, we're like, oh, wow, whoa. And then look at that. And then, so if you apply that to storytelling, right? If you apply that to communication, all of these things start to come up.
Magic. It's this is what fascinates me about the show, because I get to meet these amazing guests like you, right? And have these people on that your zone of genius is so beautiful and amazing, and I think important that every human needs to learn these skills, right? So that we can connect on a much deeper level, but we can be understood in just with so much more clarity just by controlling your voice. And that little exercise, I have to go back and listen to that, because I did not, to me, it was the same story, except I remembered the old man, right? On the first one, it was just like, get me out of here. I was mortified. That's how I felt the first round. Where the second round, I saw the sunshine, I saw the sun twinkling on the water. Oh, they were dolphin, not shark that were going to eat, and blood and limbs, all over the place in the ocean. I love it. I have to go back and listen. So that was by the way, everyone, that was a really cool experience. Try it with your partner, your spouse, your kids. Do that dialogue and see the difference in the story for yourself. That's fascinating. Last question, Marshall. We're out of time, but I do have one more question. What is the biggest leadership lesson that voice has maybe offered you? That I have a lot of executives and business owners that are leaders, right? What has this done for you from a leadership perspective?
So it's interesting. Along the way in my path, I've met a lot of executives who, or people who run a company or run a business, who were confused about why everyone else wasn't on board the way they were on board. They were just like, I don't understand. This is the deal, or this is great, or whatever have you. And when we take the moment to really let others know that they're heard, doesn't mean that you're going to do, what they say.
Absolutely.
That's actually not the requirement. You'd be really surprised at how people really, like, if you just give the idea the moment, like if the idea has its chance to fail, it's like you'd be surprised how people are kind of okay with that. It's very rare that people are like, I gave them the suggestion or heard the suggestion, and they didn't do it. Most of the time, it's the complaint is they didn't even want to hear me.
Yes.
That sticks way longer
Yes.
than something that was heard, but it just didn't go through, right? When an actor auditions, the actor that auditions and doesn't get the part learns that there will be another audition, versus the actor who the casting director didn't even want to look at them. That memory will last longer for that actor, because they'll be like, I felt completely rejected, right? But when you have the opportunity, and the word audition, when you think about that word, audition is the so all of our senses have like these like mechanical names. So a tactician for touch, gestation for eating, vision for sight, and audition is the technical term for hearing. So when we think about the word audition, it's just that. It's a tryout. People just want to be able to make the tryout. If they don't make the team, that's okay.
Yep.
If you have, as a leader, and you have people who want to make the tryouts, cool. Host the tryout if it doesn't take much time.
Sure.
Let them have the opportunity to say their piece, and at the very least, they were able to be in the tryouts. And when your team recognizes that you will at least put them in the tryouts, the loyalty that they'll have to keep trying exponentially grows.
Yeah.
Because if they know there's a place, okay, I tried. How many teams or how many events that require multiple times to try to make it? How many stories do we hear where it's like, I tried, and I tried again, and I tried again? When we have a closed ear, we're basically saying, don't try that here, go somewhere else. And then that's how you lose your people. That's how they'll go, okay, fine. I'll leave this company and go to this one.
Absolutely.
Because they gave me the tryout.
And it's so funny, Gallup, I want to say maybe 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago now, they did a bunch of research, Marshall, and they interviewed people about engagement, right? Engagement in the workplace. I think it was 73% of Americans, specifically Americans, said that they were disengaged at work. And the reason for the disengagement was their boss. They had the boss from hell. So because the boss just bulldozed, didn't listen, didn't care. It was almost like, like, you be quiet, you do what I'm telling you to do, and you march to my drum. And so 73% of Americans are disengaged. Everybody listening, that if you're a leader, an executive, or you run a team, or you own a business, people need to be heard. Doesn't mean you have to agree with them. Marshall said it. Don't have to implement their idea, but you have to respect them to the level of, I really heard that, and it's not going to work, and give them the reason why it's not going to work, right? But people need to be heard. Otherwise, see, I'm all about respect, Marshall. To me, not listening, fully listening and being present for people when they're really trying to share and be part of a team or share innovation or whatever it is, and you just discount them, that to me is offensive, right? Because people have a voice. We have to make sure that we hear their voice, because that's where the innovation comes from. And if we're shutting that down, shame on you as a leader. So I love that advice as well. We're out of time. Please connect with Marshall. Brilliant mind. Love what he's doing out there. I think my clients who work in corporate environments, you need to bring Marshall in for an event or to work with maybe some of the executive teams. This is important stuff. I think it's cutting edge. I think it's real, and there's a whole science behind it as well. And I don't even know of any expert that's doing what you're doing, Marshall. So, man, oh man, keep it going. Loving everything I heard today. So please reach out to Marshall. You can email him directly. It's coach@mindbodyspeak.com, or just check him out on his website, mindbodyspeak.com. And Marshall, I'm not going to list all of the LinkedIn and Facebook. It confuses people. If they go to your website, you have the icons if they're on Facebook or LinkedIn with you, correct?
That's funny. That's a good thing. They will be. The LinkedIn icon will be on my website. I just have my website there. Thank you. See, you listen and you learn.
Hi.
So there it is.
It's so funny doing the podcast. I'm told over and over and over again, if you give too many links and you give too much information, people will say, "Oh, I'll do it later. I don't have time to figure that out right now." And then they don't come because we're busy, right? And that's not a criticism. Right. We're busy. So when we keep things simple, they go to their website. They could say, "Oh, let me go on LinkedIn with him. I want to follow this guy. I like what he's doing." It's right there. It's easy peasy for them to jump on. So awesome. Again, mindbodyspeak.com, or please email Marshall if you really have a question. You're struggling at work, you're struggling with your family. I'm telling you, Marshall, it's a different way of coaching, but I think it really gets to the core. I think you get to the core of people's soul with what you're doing, and I'm loving it. So go to coach@mindbodyspeak.com and connect with Marshall that way. Thank you so much for being on, Marshall, and for sharing just the wisdom. Do the exercise, everybody. The yucky thing in your mouth and then the wonderful thing in your mouth. Tell your story. Pick someone in your family or at work and do that exercise and see the magic that happens. That was really a cool exercise for me, so thank you for sharing that. So appreciated that.
Oh, you're welcome, Connie. And likewise, the appreciation I extended. Thank you for having me here, and I look forward to what we can do in the future.
Love it. I'm loving it. You're kind of stuck. This is what happened when people enter my orbit, whether they're client, friend, a guest on the podcast, a colleague I collaborate with. You're stuck with me. So just get used to having me around.
That's right. No worries here.
Thank you for that. And I hope you will all join me weekly as we question, build, and discover together that change, guys, we got it. We've got your back. You've got it. It's easier than you think. Please take some advice that we shared today, some strategies and the tips that Marshall shared. Apply them, play with them, experiment with them, and watch your needle on change, whatever that change is that you're navigating. I hope that today's show helps you navigate it just a little bit easier than I feel like I've done my job. Thank you again, Marshall, and thank you all. You've been listening to Enlightenment of Change with me, your host, Connie Whitman, on webtalkradio.net. I wish you all an inspired week, and I truly am honored to have you on this journey of change with me. And I hope that every week you find some type of value in what we're teaching and sharing and exploring together. So thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you all next week.